Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Her Daily Rhythm. You are in for a treat because I am joined by the most incredible Ayurvedic doctor, Julie Bernier. If you have not met me before, my name's Natalie Smythe. I am a qualified naturopath guiding you on this journey with FemVed. FemVed is a holistic wellness platform dedicated to supporting women from menstruation into menopause and to really democratizing women's health. And so if you have not been here before, every expert that we interview and you're guided by really connects you back to your source, back to your rhythm, back to your intuition, back to you, because as we know, as we speak about through all of the episodes, you are unique and individual. So start by taking in the wisdom, implementing a little bit of things each week. So onto this week, we are joined by Julie Bernier. She's an Ayurvedic doctor who helps women bring their bodies back into balance, whether you're struggling with hormonal imbalances, period problems, digestive issues, skin conditions, anxiety, depression, or even preparing for or recovering from birth. Rooted in the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda, Julie's holistic approach is deeply personalised, helping women heal naturally. And from her own struggles in her 20s, led her to Ayurveda, transforming her digestion, her hormones, and overall well-being. She's a registered practitioner, Ayurvedic yoga therapist, and certified massage therapist, trained both in the US and India. So please dive in, ask any questions that you have too, because we will always answer those at the end. Welcome, Julie, for your presence and your commitment and your path. It's truly very inspiring because I know a lot of us have lived, it's not an uncommon story, but then we don't end up studying it and we don't actually find the solutions.
Thank you for having me here.
So I guess what I'd love to get started is we've spoken about your journey, your advocacy really, but how did you get to Ayurveda and why did Ayurveda resonate with you, particularly as an American woman? Because it's not really the first solution we would go to.
Yes, I feel that Ayurveda found me. The story is a little strange because there was just one moment when I heard somebody mention Ayurveda. I felt this deep curiosity to find out more. I didn't even really know what it was, but it spiked some interest in me. And I bought a book on Ayurveda and devoured the book. And everything that I read made so much sense. It was so logical. Ayurveda was based on nature and this concept of the doshas, these different energies. It all really resonated with me. I went to India. I was doing my yoga teacher training there, and we had an Ayurvedic doctor visit us and teach a little bit about Ayurveda because the two are very much connected. And that was really what motivated me to study it formally when I came back to the US. So I entered into what I now recognize as the Ayurveda vortex, where I began studying and I just haven't stopped. And I had never imagined that I would be a doctor of anything or working in health and wellness. That was totally not something that I foresaw 12, 13, 14 years ago, but it's where I've ended up. So, yeah, I feel like it kind of chose me and found me in the right moment and the right place.
I think that's interesting because in this time where there's a lot of change happening and the big catalyst for growth, I often hear people saying that I didn't choose this, it chose me. And I feel like that's a sign of your path and your calling. A lot of the time we get the whispers of where we're supposed to go, but in our Western culture and our education, we need a catalyst for us to really listen and to make change and to heed the way. So I think that's
Yeah,
really relevant.
definitely.
Yeah,
Def-
on this podcast, we obviously speak a lot about Ayurveda, but I think every teacher, every doctor has their imprint and their own way of sharing and their own medicine. So I wonder if you could share with our listeners what Ayurveda means to you and how you guide your clients through Ayurveda.
Sure. So, Ayurveda is a holistic system of healing from ancient India. And it's based on the fact that we are connected to nature, that our individual microcosm is a reflection of the macrocosm of nature, and we are affected. So, all of its foundational principles are based on these core philosophies of nature, the five elements, how these elements come together and form these three energies, these functional energies that we call the doshas. Anybody who's come across Ayurveda has heard something about the doshas, and they sound a little bit mystical and magical, but really they're just three types of energy that exist within nature and within our bodies. This is the foundational philosophy of Ayurvedic understanding and treatment. It allows us to connect what other systems of medicine can't really make sense of, because they may be looking at disease manifestation, for example, from a very physical perspective and how it's manifesting in a particular body or in something which can actually be tested in your blood work. But we are so much more subtle than that. We're not only the physical gross form, we are an energetic form. So if we're not able to understand those energies, we really can't understand the body. Through Ayurveda, we evaluate the dosha manifestations in an individual's body, which gives us a very individualized perspective, because we see everybody as a little bit different depending upon how these doshas manifest in their body, the quantity and qualities of these doshas, and which doshas go out of balance. When I'm working with my clients, I am really trying to understand who they are, not only in their doshic makeup, which we call their prakriti or their constitution, but who they are as an individual, what their life is like, what their diet is like, what their stress load is like, what makes them stressed, to really get a good picture of who is this person and how can I help them. And everything that I guide them through is individualized. Diet is a huge one. We are what we eat. So guiding clients through making dietary changes, I use herbal formulas, ancient Ayurvedic herbs, and classical Vedic herbal formulas. Movement, lifestyle is a huge one, and some external therapies like self massage or oil massage on the head. The protocol for each person is very individualized. You could come to me with period pain and bloating, and somebody else comes to you with the same thing, but you receive a totally different protocol because you're different people, and how it's manifesting in your body is different. So that's one of the most powerful aspects of Ayurveda and treatment. So that was a long-winded answer, but
No, no, I know that was a really big one, and I think that's it. It's that microcosm and the macrocosm, and realizing that we are all individual and unique. And I think it's quite beautiful, because in the age of social media and quick fixes, you can't replicate it to that. It's just building that relationship with your body and understanding that, because I think that's the time we're in now. So I know it's really complex
totally.
and it's really individual, but maybe somebody that is interested, and if we're looking at maybe the modern woman, what are you noticing that's actually changing in your practice if we're talking about this moment of rapid external change in the macrocosm, but then on that microcosm level of what people are experiencing too?
Yeah, well, the macrocosm that we are seeing the greatest shift in right now, I would say, is with technology and how that
Mm,
affects our daily lives through social media, through having a cell phone, through always needing to be available. And how is that affecting the microcosm? So, what I'm seeing more and more of is anxiety, depression, and disconnection. Those are
mm,
incredibly common, and almost every woman who comes to work with me has one or all three, and high levels of stress. So unfortunately, that microcosm is um, having on the microcosm, also on the physical microcosm, because eventually it will manifest also in the body and vice versa. So it could start anxiety or depression and end up as constipation or weight gain, for example.
And then that anxiety, depression, and disconnection. I know in Ayurveda, we're not talking about organs and we're not talking about symptomology or things like that, but is there a pattern or is there a relationship between different parts of the body that people can start to look at before they would see you?
Yes. And we do look at the organs and we do look at the very physical aspect of the body as well in Ayurveda, not only the energy, but how it is manifesting typically. One place that is so common is in the gut. So, with the digestive process, typically, if there is some sort of mental imbalance, there very well may be a digestive imbalance. And even a digestive imbalance can lead to a mental imbalance. So, this is the most important place where we can start to do a little bit of self diagnosis and self treatment if we analyze our digestion and how it's working, if we are experiencing any kind of digestive discomfort like bloating, gas, acidity, stomach pains, constipation, diarrhea, IBS, this digestive system is really at the core of our health. It is the center and will play into every other aspect of our system, including the mind. So we have some Ayurvedic herbal formulas which are meant for the mind, like that's their effect. That's what they're meant to be used for to help with anxiety. But they don't have any specific herbs which help actually with the mind. Whereas we have other herbs which have a very direct effect on the mind, like Brahmi or ashwagandha, which I'm sure many people have heard of. We have other formulas that don't have anything specific for the mind, but they help the digestive process, which just goes to
Mm.
show how profound that gut brain connection is, which, has been well researched in modern medicine and then long ago in Ayurveda. This is a place that we cannot ignore. It's a very first sign as well. If something is off in the gut, this is the place where we want to definitely put attention because that will affect every other system in our body, physical and mental at some point.
So I think it starts with as well just noticing that subtle signs because I'm hearing most commonly at the moment that people are getting brain fog or even this overdiagnosis of ADHD, for example. These are all symptoms that can relate to that kind of that gut, or I don't like to use the word leaky gut, but that connection, bidirectional feedback from the brain. You mentioned ashwagandha, and I just wanted to highlight that because we have these super herbs that get like a PR campaign at certain times. And I always find it quite funny because even normal people that know nothing about herbs come to you like, I need ashwagandha, and ashwagandha is going to save all of my problems. So since you mentioned it, I wonder if you could maybe speak about ashwagandha and how to respectfully use it, or even talking about respectfully using herbs and how important that is.
Yeah, sure. Not all herbs are meant for everybody. So that's one problem with these herbs getting their big PR campaigns, as you so cutely said. And there are so many others out there that experience the same thing. Ashwagandha is a little bit warming. So, for example, it wouldn't be good for somebody who has a lot of heat in their body. It's more nourishing and somewhat heavy to digest. What a lot of people don't know is that because the root of ashwagandha is used, it needs to be decocted in order to be digestible. Very commonly, ashwagandha is ground into a powder and then just put into a capsule, and people are taking this capsule form. But because those particles are so gross, not gross, disgusting, but the opposite, subtle, the gut
Mhm.
can't digest them well. So ashwagandha is one herb that you're actually supposed to boil. When you boil it, you decoct the essence from the herb. There's all this wisdom with each and every herb in how to take it so that it's absorbable to your body and so that it will really have a good use. And ashwagandha is an amazing herb. It's great for anxiety, it's great for vata imbalances having to do with the mind and the musculoskeletal system. It's good for building bulk in the body. So maybe it wouldn't be ideal for somebody who's overweight and really wanting to lose weight. Like in bigger quantities, it might actually cause them to gain weight. So I think when it comes to herbs,
Mm.
the best thing to do is seek out a professional of that herbal formulary. For example, I wouldn't self-diagnose and then take a Chinese medicine herb because I really have no idea how their herbs
Mm.
work. I would seek out a Chinese medicine doctor because it's their specialty and they'll know the subtle effects of these herbs rather than what's commonly done in the Western modern approach is just to look at the very like gross effect of an herb without understanding its subtle energetics. Is it cooling? Is it warming? Is it heavy? Is it light? How does it need to be ground or dried or purified in order to take it? Yeah.
Mm. And I think that's quite difficult for people to understand when taking these medicines. We just think of everything as like just physical matter rather than them being an energetic form. It's about building that relationship with nature and all things, how they have this cooling and drying and heating effect. I wonder if you could speak about that because I don't think actually anybody's touched about that in depth on the podcast is about how foods and herbs, because I know you work a lot with beautiful food and I've just downloaded your cookbook, about foods and herbs that are drying, cooling, and heating.
Mhm.
Would you be able to explain? I know, again, that's complex and a lot, and probably, yeah, that would be a whole conversation in itself, but just a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So every food has its own particular energetics. So when we are looking at food from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're not only looking at its vitamin, mineral, protein content, for example, we're looking at those subtle energetics. And just to give you a few examples of what those are, some of the main ones we look at if a food is cooling or heating. So, what does that mean? It doesn't mean like cooling when in your mouth or heating when it's in your mouth. It means once that food goes into your system, it has an energetic effect where it will either bring a cooling effect or a heating effect or maybe a neutral effect. All foods have this energy, all herbs have this energy. And you could feel that, for example, if you drink watermelon juice or eat a slice of watermelon or cucumber salad or hibiscus tea. These particular foods are all cooling. So we consume
Mm.
them and we feel like deeply refreshed. So they're going to have a pitta pacifying effect in the body, which is a cooling effect. Whereas other foods like chilies, ginger, garlic, spicy foods will have a warming effect. When we consume these foods, they warm the body. And so that may have more of a vata or a kapha pacifying effect, depending on the food. And then foods may also be dry or oily. They can be light to digest or heavy to digest. So according to their qualities, every food is going to affect us differently. And that makes certain foods more suited for us in certain seasons, in certain phases of our life, in certain imbalances and diseases. We can adjust our diet somewhat so that the energetics of the food we're eating are actually balancing those energies within us, those doshas, those vital energies within us. So it is quite complex. Then there's another layer of it where we actually have the six tastes. We qualify food in Ayurveda according to six different tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. So, those tastes, depending upon which tastes are dominant in a food, that will also change the energy of how a food affects us. So, it is quite complex, but I think that the takeaway for anybody who is working with their diet is to realize that food will have a subtle energetic effect on you. It's not just something that goes in the mouth and then comes out the other end. It is shifting your internal heat, or it's cooling you down, or it's drying you out, or it's making you feel too heavy. So we need to be mindful of taking in the right food for us so that we maintain like a nourished, balanced state.
Hmm. And then I guess two questions that I have from there. Does what you take in change if you're experiencing some type of illness as well? Or like, or
Yeah, it
maybe, sorry, yeah, an illness or even a chronic disease. Um, yeah, I
it
suppose they're
does.
two quite different. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Illness or chronic disease, according to Ayurveda, we could put them in the same pot because both are a state outside of equilibrium and balance. Even a headache, something mild, is an imbalance, and something grave, like a chronic disease, is an imbalance. So, yes, typically what we do when we're in a healthy state is eat according to the season. So when we change our diet a little bit according to the season, we naturally balance the outer effects of nature. So, for example, in summer, it's very hot, the sun is dominant, the sun has a very drying, depleting effect on our system. So, we want to take in foods which are more cooling and foods which are nourishing but light and easy to digest because we're not usually very hungry in summer and we have less capacity to digest. So, that's just one seasonal example. So if we shift our diet, and it doesn't have to be drastic, but even subtly shift our diet throughout the seasons, we keep our body in balance. And then if we are experiencing an imbalance in a time of dis-ease, of ease, lack of balance, whether that be something chronic or something recent, we can shift our diet somewhat to avoid foods which are going to feed the disease and to bring in foods which are going to support our body's healing.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there are certain foods which, in any disease with inflammation, that we would try to avoid, like nightshades, bell peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, and white potatoes. Those foods, which, when there's inflammation, they tend to trigger more inflammation. So that's one example. Also, things which are really heavy to digest and are going to block our channels and block this subtle energy flow, like greasy food, deep fried food, cold food and drinks, which will cause constriction and can cause blockages and blockage of this flow of energy in our system. So those ones are very typical that we would avoid in a diseased state, dis-ease.
Mm. And those deadly nightshades, are they quite heating then if they're causing inflammation, or no? That's I'm using my Western language for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we're thinking of inflammation from the Ayurvedic perspective, it
Yeah,
can manifest in different ways. It could
sure.
manifest as heat, redness. It could manifest as swelling and heaviness, or it could manifest as pain. So essentially, it's like an emergency response in the body where we feel these symptoms. And we look at it in Ayurveda from a dosha perspective, which of these three energies is present. So the nightshades, it's not that they are heating, it's that they have some particular property that makes them difficult in the body, that makes them like triggers.
Mm.
But if you're healthy, eat them. So that's
Mm,
what's
mm, mm.
interesting. It's more like in an imbalanced state, they're foods we want to avoid. Whereas if we're in a balanced state, it's good to eat everything, which is wholesome. Like
Mm,
that's the idea, that's the goal, which is different from modern modern nutrition where it's just trying to continually eliminate more and more food groups. I would say we want to actually expand what we're eating and not see any food as good or bad, but understand that every food has its own properties and energetics, and understand, okay, is this food good for me right now? Or maybe it's not suited for
mm.
me right now, or it's not really suited for my body, but it could be suited well for somebody else's body.
Yeah, that's so important too. Again, it's that individualization and where you are right now, which may change in a couple of weeks' time.
Right, definitely. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because what we think maybe doesn't suit us in this moment, which I see with so many women, they tell me, "Oh, I haven't eaten bread in 5 years because it gave me bloating." Okay, well, this is 5 years later. So we have to see how your body is now. And if we can strengthen your digestive system, then that bread may not cause you an issue. And also, how are you eating that bread? Are we talking about pizza? Because pizza will be difficult for most people to digest, or even with a nice organic sourdough. Was that triggering? So nothing in Ayurveda is black and white, and I love this about it because it just allows us to look at the subtleties of really everything to understand how it's affecting our subtle system as well.
Mm. Which I think in our modern day mindset and culture, it can make people feel uncomfortable because in our culture, most of them, it's like there is only black or white. There is only this way or this way. There's no in between. And I know like that's very unsettling for people for that very reason. So it's that real investigation of who am I and who am I right now? That's
Yeah,
what it
you're so
highlights to
right.
me.
You're so
Yeah.
right. Yeah, people want it to be easy. And it's just not black and white. Like nature isn't black and white. Nature is in a constant state of change. The seasons change, the weather changes. So that means we too change. The phase of the moon changes. We
Mm.
are complex, and blanket statements around any food or herb or exercise or diet being good or bad, it's not really valid because it's just there's so much more to it. We have to understand the energetics of each of these individual principles to understand if it's good or bad for me in this moment.
That's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And I suppose since we're speaking about women's health and luxury of women's health changes from menstruation to menopause, but I think probably for menstruating women and what we're seeing a lot, or I get a lot of questions about, is how your diet changes through ovulation and then menstruation. How does Ayurveda look at changing your eating habits at different times of your cycle?
Mm. So not as particular, I would say, throughout every phase of the cycle as some of these other methods that you mentioned. However, just before the cycle and during the cycle, some changes are recommended. So during the cycle and also just before, because there's a lot of doshic energy fluctuation prior to the cycle and then during, we want to avoid anything which is going to be very heavy for the body because it's already going through a really heavy detox, essentially. So we want to avoid anything that's going to cause a weakened digestive capacity, which could
Mm,
lead to blockage of this particular energy called vata, which is connected with the excretion of menstrual blood. So it's when that energy and that energy, we'll get a little bit Ayurveda sciencey right now. So this particular energy, it moves things down. It's called apanavata. It's a subtle aspect of vata, which is a dry, cold, light energy, and it pushes the menstrual blood down and out. It also pushes the urine out, the feces out, the baby out in labor. So it's a downward moving force. And if this energy is blocked and obstructed, it can revert upwards and cause menstrual pain. So we try during the cycle to avoid anything which is going to cause a gross or subtle blockage of this energy. A gross blockage, for example, being like a tampon or a cup, where that energy that pushes the blood out, it literally cannot move down and out. So this
mm,
has been amazing for me. I teach women about this and have heard from dozens of women that just by stopping using tampons and cups, they have less cramps or no cramps, which is quite profound.
Wow.
Yeah, and then on the subtle aspect, eating foods which are really heavy, which often are the foods that women crave or maybe think that they crave during their period, like pizza, burgers, fried food. Those kinds of foods are too heavy at this time and can weaken the digestive fire and then cause aggravation of this subtle energy, vata, which is intimately connected with the menstrual system. Also, cold food and drinks can do the same. So these are some of the main things that we would avoid at that time of the month. And then depending upon a woman's own particular manifestation of her menstrual cycle, like upon if she has more pitta imbalance, vata imbalance, or dosha or kapha, we might adjust the diet a little bit more subtly as well. So again, it
Mm.
depends. It's not black and white. But
Yeah,
I
I
will
know.
say like black and white, no heavy foods. And what's traditionally recommended and seen in more ancient um, traditions, which are still carried out, like in India, is that women would eat very light, nourishing food like wheat cooked with milk. So it's nourishing, but
Mm.
it's going to be very pure and very easy to digest to just facilitate a healthy menstrual period.
Mm. And I think that reflects in some cultures that I've read in spiritual texts that they would fast during their menstruation too, which seems the opposite of what we learn. But I'm not sure if you've come across that or that's something that is healthy, but perhaps not.
Yeah, that I haven't come across. It's not something that is recommended in Ayurveda. Eating lightly,
Mm.
yes, but I think using my own logic, I think it could cause imbalance to totally fast, to completely fast.
Mm.
Sometimes what's said to be fasting too might just actually mean eating lightly. So fasting from your normal diet, but you're still eating like this milk with wheat porridge, but it's very light. So that kind of fast could be helpful. Whereas completely abstaining from food or doing just like a fruit fast could cause a lot of vata aggravation. Yeah.
So it's that intuition and yeah, following those methods of the unheavy foods and oils and fats.
Hmm.
Um, I guess what I would love to speak about is your passion for cooking and food. And I know Ayurvedic cooking and the way of eating is quite vast and different from what a lot of people know. But I think it's that what is common or important is the preparation of foods and the mixing of spices and it goes back to, I suppose, the cooling and heating aspects. So I know it would be difficult for you to explain like a day in the life of what you would eat because it's individualized, but what are your to suit maybe all doshas, or what's something that people could start with?
Yeah. So warm cooked food, that's meant for all human beings. So warm really meaning it's cooked and also in temperature, it's at least room temperature. So warm and cooked food will support the digestive process versus a cold food or a raw food. Like I always give the example of a raw carrot. So when you eat a raw carrot, your body has to go through the whole process of breaking it down and digesting it. Versus when you put a carrot, let's say you're going to blanch it or boil it. So you put it in a pot of water and you put it over fire and you cook it for a few minutes, it is already almost like getting partially digested in that pot. And once you put it into your body, it's much easier on your body. So that is difficult for many Western people wanting to, go for like quick salads or raw diets, which are very, very popular and can definitely feel great in the short run. But what is going to nurture the digestive system is food that has been cooked in some way, whether it's baking, sauteing, blanching, and that's warm in temperature. So this is something that can be really transformational too, is to just drink warm water instead of cold water or even room temperature water. And that triggers the digestive fire and aids digestion. And so many women also tell me, like, I thought I was going to hate it, but I feel so much better when I'm drinking warm water because that's what the body really is nurtured by. So those two things, and also as much as we can, eating food which has more life in it, which has more prana. So, prana being this vital energy that we find in the sun and we find in our foods. And the more alive a food is, meaning the closer it is still to its state in nature, when we eat that food, we receive that same prana, we receive energy from the food. So, the fresher our food is, the better, meaning food which is freshly cooked instead of like meal prepping and then still eating the leftovers on Saturday. By then the food has lost its vibrancy and its energy, so it won't give us the same energizing effect as it would when we eat it the day it's cooked. So those things, as simple as they are, if everyone was to just make that switch, it would have a really positive effect on digestion and on energy as well.
Mm. Because we almost seem to be in a bit of an epidemic of energy. This, you hear this word energy. I don't have enough energy, and I think there's multiple layers to that, isn't there? But I think that's a big one, and then when it comes into digestion too. So, what about people that are like traveling a lot, or you have these high execs, or if you're going between time zones of one season to another season, what would be your most quickest adaptation to ground yourself, really?
That can be hard on the body, but also it's fantastic and a very fun part of life. So
Mm.
I would say we should still enjoy it. And I travel a lot. I'm a travel junkie, so I have a lot of experience with this. Um, to at least when we travel, to try to stay on a regular mealtime schedule. So our food is going to change, but if we maintain our same food schedule, that in itself will really help digestion. Ayurveda teaches that actually when we eat is more important than what we eat. So the idea being that we're eating around the same time every day, and when we travel, to stick to that routine. Now, when you're changing time zones, it's going to get completely flip flopped. But what I do and what I have found really works is I try to hop onto the new time zone as soon as I arrive and follow the proper eating routine. So if I eat lunch at noon here in Mexico, when I go to India, I also try to eat lunch at noon. And of course, for a few days, it can feel a little weird, and I'll just eat maybe a little bit less than usual because I can feel my digestion is off, like it's the middle of the night for my body. But that helps to get the body on track and to keep the digestion strong, even when we're eating foods which are totally different from our usual our usual diet. We can handle it better, basically.
Hmm. So again, it's that just check-in relationship with your body, simplicity, and the creating a rhythm within in the rhythm that you are.
Yes, rhythm being the key word. It's all about rhythm. Your body is built upon endless rhythms, your circadian rhythms, your menstrual rhythms, your hormone rhythms. So it needs your assistance in giving it some rhythm in your sleep rhythm and in your food rhythm, the two main ones. So when we can support our body in that sense, it will keep all of these systems functioning as they should. And it's all about rhythm. That's, I mean, like the golden word of Ayurveda: rhythm and routine. And it doesn't
Mm.
mean boring. It just means your body, it needs some rhythm and routine. It's just the way that the body is.
Mm. Well, I suppose we've approached our bodies as linear, and they're not as women, are they? There's these complex rhythms within each other. And that's a new way of looking at our bodies, which we haven't really been aware of, or it's there, but we haven't tuned into it with our like innate intelligence, have we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Like ignoring that there's even a rhythm with menstruation and treating the body the same during menstruation as not during menstruation, whereas it does need some shifts in order to honor this like great detox that it's going through at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to speak to you for a lot more, but I can't believe time is going so quickly. I also want to talk about maybe the importance of retreats. I think retreats have always been in our like lives to go, and we go away from life and we eat these healthy foods, but I think they kind of have a different meaning now, particularly the way Ayurveda um, holds them, because we need to really be cared for because we don't allow that in our modern world. So I guess firstly is, what are some key takeaways that you could advise during this chaotic period? And I'm sure it's probably a lot of what we've spoken about.
Yeah, to try to maintain some routine and rhythm, eating around the same time. So the food is going to be heavier. The food is going to be a lot more, shall we say, nourishing at this time of year and can be a little bit heavy for a digestive system. So just trying to maintain some semblance of an eating routine and to eat meals instead of continually snacking, which can happen at this time. Like there's a cookie here and there's a little chocolate there and a little, you know, leftovers here, but to try to have just three proper meals and only a snack in between if hungry. That's been very helpful advice. And also drinking ginger tea at this time can help to stimulate the digestive fire, the digestive capacity. And that's important because in this season, we're eating heavier foods. This is when a lot of pastries come out and a lot of really heavy meats come out. And so if we drink something which is going to be stimulating for the digestive fire, it helps our body to be able to process that heavy food better. So ginger tea, you can just boil some, like a chunk of fresh ginger in water for 5 minutes and strain it and sip on that, and you'll feel it has a warming effect and it has like a digestive stimulating effect. So I think those 2 3 things will be very, very helpful in the holiday season. And I'm sorry, you asked one more thing.
No, yeah, I know. I asked 3 questions at once just so I don't forget for myself, so then I know that I need to come back. But no, I really like how you mentioned just that simplicity, and I think we always think that the things that move the needle need to be complex, but they really are simple and usually not
Yes.
sexy, but they do move the needle.
Oh, totally. That's Ayurveda for you. Simple but not sexy.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't work for,
Yeah.
marketing well, does it? But yeah,
No.
but you'll notice the benefits.
Uh,
And I think probably where a lot of people can get started, because I think it from I know when I speak to people about Ayurveda, they feel perhaps a little bit overwhelmed as to how to get started and all of these things. And I think probably the best place is a retreat. And I know that you are hosting a wonderful retreat, but also that element of how self-care and retreats are so important and not a selfish act, because I hear a lot of women speaking about feeling guilty and selfish to take time out to have self-care and retreat. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that and your wonderful retreat.
yeah. Yeah, sure. So retreats are um, fantastic opportunities for those who are able to attend, to be able to step outside of our normal day to day, essentially, our normal routine, our normal day to day stress, where we sometimes start to kind of lose our own essence because we're just trying to keep up with a very fast and busy life. And what I've seen, I've hosted many retreats, and they may only be 4 days, but what I've seen is that in those few days, people are able to remember themselves and to reconnect with themselves because they're taken out of their normal environment. So, on the one hand, taking yourself out of your normal environment, you're removing yourself from all of those stressors, which of course is going to be so healthy for you. But also, you are seeing yourself, you are learning about yourself in another environment. So that helps us to reconnect to our essence. And then we have, the added benefits of just being nurtured and being cared for, being cooked for, having a schedule which allows you to go to bed early and encourages you to wake up early and to see the sunrise and to move your body and to have an experience where you really get to feel in your body, like, oh, this is what it feels like when I'm eating well and when I'm moving and when I'm sleeping well. And that's so inspiring for going back home. The thing is that we will never really make any changes in our lives unless we have the belief, or more importantly, we have the proof that they're actually going to do some good. So a retreat gives you that proof, like, oh yeah, like this feels great. Eating warm cooked food feels great. Eating on time feels great. Sleeping early feels great. Doing 20 minutes of yoga feels amazing. So then going home, people are more motivated and inspired to try to keep up some of those routines and having a good look at life, like, what is getting so much importance in my life that I now have no time to take care of this vehicle? Because without the care of this vehicle, in the future, we won't be able to do all of those things in life. Like, this is a foundational vehicle through which we can experience life, making it so, so important. So, yeah, I offer a couple of retreats a year, and lately have been doing everything in Mexico where I live. There are just so many fantastic places to come here, um, and love giving people this experience of living Ayurveda and also connecting with other human beings in really positive, soulful ways as well. Nothing forced. But it's such a joy to see groups of 12, 14 people who don't know each other come together and become friends, and see how that is so healing in this world of
Mm.
isolation and loneliness as well.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you. So I guess I know we've spoken about a lot, but what would be your final takeaways for our women listening to bring Ayurveda, what you've fallen passionately in love with, into their lives?
Yeah. So, final takeaway. I said kind of jokingly that Ayurveda is simple but not sexy.
Yeah.
But I think that that would be it, in the sense that, um, don't make it too complicated. We are seeking in this modern world, like, being being led to believe that the problem is our lack of magnesium, or that the problem is that we're not taking this particular bioidentical hormone, and that there's some magic solution for our problems. And it makes it incredibly confusing, and also a little bit scary, because we feel like there's something which is the answer that's out of our control. But really and truly, your basic aspects of self care are your greatest healers. And usually it's one of those aspects that's out of place that's causing a problem, whether it's your food, your lack of regular meal times, lack of sleep or improper sleep, or stress. So take an inventory of those aspects of your life, and you will empower yourself to support your body's healing from whatever chronic disease or headache or menstrual pain, whatever it may be. Those are usually at the root cause, typically those few things. So while that, it shouldn't seem scary, it should seem like incredibly empowering that actually how I'm taking care of myself, that will have the greatest impact on my health. So we want to keep it simple and it's not uber sexy. Like I know it's tempting to um, fall into the trap of wanting to buy that expensive supplement and believing like this will be the thing, but it's not going to be the thing. It's these other things that are the real medicine and they're free. And they're free and
Mm.
they make you feel really good, make you feel fantastic, actually, sleeping well,
Mm.
eating well. Yeah,
Wow, I think, well, you're certainly living and breathing it, to highlight to everybody that it is possible, sorry, not impossible.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. It works
And
for sure.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for inspiring so many of us, including myself. And so, where can people find you and sign up to your retreats? I know you have a wonderful website full of resources and courses.
Yeah, so my website, trueayurveda.com, and also on Instagram, I share tons of tips and short videos around how people can start implementing Ayurveda into their life. So that's my name at Julie Bernier.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
your soul
Natalie.
beauty.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.